Hi guys, and welcome to episode 4 of the Deep Dives, shortly off the back of episode 3. So, just wanted to continue on the theme that we were on of just kind of diving deeper based on the insights we found. So, I wanted to kind of like look into the round one market in the same way that I did for the match winner, but for the alternative markets, and to see whether there are some markets that are stronger than others for the early round. And my theory was in line with how the match winner, it was the higher odds bets that were at a kind of a higher ROI than the shorter odds due to the uncertainty mentioned. I thought that scenario can apply to all the markets I'm using, or this is the exact same logic. The higher the price, the easier it is to create a bit more margin in the strike rate. So what I did was broke it down into round one and the later rounds again. And yeah, so we did find a correlation between basically what I did was at the end I split it up into odds ranges. So I'd look at round one where all markets shorter than 2.3 odds, and obviously I've already done the match odds analysis, so I excluded that data, and ones with a price higher than greater than 2.3. And as you can see, the ROI is 8% for a price at 2.3 or higher, whereas it's only 2.87% for shorter than 2.3%. And you can see that in terms of the profit, in terms of the markets, you can see that for round one, a lot of the profit comes from the set scores, 2-1 and total sets equal 3, which makes sense because those are the markets where I feel that the prices are generally a bit higher and they're a bit easier to find for trends. So I think that strategic element of potentially just focusing on the higher odds ranges generally in the early rounds makes a lot more sense. And then in the later rounds, obviously the results are a bit cleaner all round, really. I think in terms of multiples, they're not really doing any damage, but I do feel like there's been many multiple bets this season, or not this season, but over the seasons where I've not quite got it right at the shorter, because obviously if you're doing two 1.4 shots, you need to be winning 75% of the time. And there were ones earlier in the season like Jari versus Kekmanovic where I got it completely wrong. Jari was probably decent value. So I think I am going to be pretty careful with the multiple bets at any kind of stage of the tournament, but they're only a small component of my betting anyway. But yeah, like the good thing about it is it's shown that as you can see, the game's handicap minus is a strong market in the latter stages. So I do become quite good at predicting who's going to be a dominant winner. And although the overs games doesn't quite like reflect on here, I think in the past I used to for example, I'd tip total sets equals 3 on my Wadster one and then overs on my Picchio. So my stats on overs on my Picchio account are really good, but it's not quite reflective of here. But I think that's an area that I can always kind of target in the latter rounds as well. I think I've got a good read on both overs and unders markets generally. And yeah, so I think generally once we get into the later rounds, like I don't really have too many areas of weaknesses. All the even the match winner market has been really strong in the later rounds, and as you can see, there's a very small sample for the total games under, but there's no kind of area of weaknesses that we need to kind of look into from that perspective. So as a wrapping that up into a general conclusion, I think moving forward, the key is going to be focus round one, just not having too much action at all. I think what I'll do is look for a few good 2-1s or total sets equals 3. And maybe even some alternative handicaps where you might feel like there's a really dominant player and maybe betting a slightly higher handicap than to get a price of 2.5. That could be an option. But generally speaking, just not really sort of taking that as time to relax, which is a strange concept because I think something I've struggled with in the past is you get a lot of other tipsters, they'll be sending a lot of bets in round one. And it always has like this complex where you start feeling lazy when there's a lot of other people doing a lot of work and you're sort of taking a back seat and sort of seeing it as a scouting couple of days, which is how I am going to see it moving forward now I have this data. But I think in the past, as I said, that's been a struggle with my intuition, is knowing that I'm probably not as good in that early rounds, but also feeling like I should get involved because there's so many matches. Whereas now I know I don't need to get as involved just because there are a lot of matches. I can just use it as a chance to really pick my spots and be deliberate, because I know that in the later stages I'm still going to find plenty of volume, as the season has shown. It's certainly not felt like I'm having to look really strongly or look too forensically for options in the latter stages of events. So obviously round one we're focusing on bigger prices in the match winner set scores, and then the later rounds it will be a case of then just like going with my instincts really, as I said, where the sort of all markets are coming across as pretty strong. So I think it's basically, in terms of that perspective, I don't need to change much at all really. I can just bet how I have been betting because it's been largely successful. Obviously it's not a case of now being overconfident, but it's a case of just if I keep doing what I'm doing, then that's going to lead to some great results, I'd like to think. So I think in terms of, even though I'm not talked a lot in these ones, I think I've covered a lot in terms of moving forward what I'm likely to be. I think I'll probably be focusing a lot more on kind of like the draws as well, like in round one, and looking at the outright draws as a whole, because I think that's a really good way of seeing how certain players might be undervalued or overvalued, but at the same time not betting unless I really see good margin for value. So yeah, it's just a shift in mindset, and I think it's going to be good for me as well in terms of not being worn down or like not mentally tiring out due to having too much action in the early rounds as well. Just some other things to point out. I feel like my live bets have been a bit weak, to be honest, in terms of, I think it's you've got a lot of the same issues with some of the live bets that I'm taking compared to the other, like in terms of the first round. It's almost the problem that I have with first round match winner bets. It's the same problem with lives, that it's I'm using the match winner market obviously, but I'm also, it's a more impulsive thing because it's in the moment, you're assessing value quickly, and I think I have made mistakes where I haven't given enough margin. So I think for live bets, I'm going to be kind of cutting a lot of them out unless I'm creating some extra margin for myself in those markets as well. There are some really good live value bets around. The Haddad Meyer one against Rybakina, where she was sort of 3.5 I tipped her at, and I think she probably should have been 2.3, 2.4 for that set, is a really good example of a time to really strike. But I think it's one of those where, again, I'm probably going to be looking a bit more at the higher odds ranges now to account for that extra uncertainty. But with the caveat that everything, if a bet makes a lot of mathematical sense, then and should be value, then I will take it. For example, if the Bublik one, like even though he saved 2 match points and won, is the perfect example of a bet where you really are sort of looking a bit more at it from a value perspective, because you're getting a price of 1.65 on him to win one of the next two sets. So in terms of the percentage of actually winning a set, it would say be you'd only need it to be sort of 40% chance of Bublik winning a set, whereas if you're betting the match winner at 2.0, even though it's a bigger price, you still need 50% on that set winning. So yeah, just trying to make the point where if I'm betting on a player who's a set up and a slightly shorter price, that can actually be a bit easier than if I was to take a 1.8 price and at the start of set three. And just sort of understanding that the mechanics of value in those situations is important also. But yeah, for the live bets, I just want to, as I say, I want to create a bit more margin and just make sure that all my bets are making a lot of mathematical sense rather than trusting my intuition. Because as we've seen, it is the impulsive betting in the early stages of tournaments or in a live match is an area of weakness, and that's something that I'm going to really be looking to address moving forward. Yeah, so pretty much covered everything there. I think in terms of, I might, in my next betting diary, one which will probably be at the start of the new month, I'll summarize how all the tipsters are doing, and I'll also provide a bit more kind of a summary of kind of what I want to do moving forward in terms of staking, and a few other things that I might not have covered in this one. But yeah, I think largely I've kind of done all the analysis I want to do on the deep dives for the time being. Obviously, if anyone has any kind of ideas of things to explore, then let me know. I've also sort of looked into the surfaces, but there's not too much that's kind of exciting to talk about. The ROI is pretty good across all surfaces, slightly lower for outdoor hard. But yeah, I there's not too much that needs saying about that. So yeah, I'll yeah, check out now. But obviously, if anyone has any feedback or any ideas of ways to explore and ultimately improve my own betting, then be really grateful for that. So cheers.